Hello. I just watched the first episode of season 4 of Bridgerton. Unlike my Stranger Things watch through, I actually did kind of recently rewatch all of Bridgerton, and it was not to prepare for season 4 in October. I just felt like rewatching all of Bridgerton, which I like Bridgerton. I like the vibes of it. I grew up reading Jane Austen books and watching Jane Austen adaptations, so I'm really into like the Regency period era. So I really like the vibes of Bridgerton, but actually overall don't really like most of the seasons. Like season 1 is okay. I love season 2 and I hated season 3. And I was a little nervous going into season 4 cuz Benedict is probably my least favorite Bridgerton. So I wasn't really sure how I felt about watching an entire season about him, but I really liked this episode. It was really fun. I think in a way we got to see a new, I mean, Benedict got to see a new view of society, but I think we also get to see a new view of him and how much he doesn't like society, and it was really nice to see that. I really liked just the story of the episode and how it unfolded and everything like that. So I took a ton of notes. My first one is like the beginning of it, which was I loved that the beginning of it focuses on the servants because this is essentially a Cinderella story where like Sophie's a servant in a way, and so we're focusing more on like all the work and effort that they have to put in to create these massive balls and like prepare for people coming and stuff like that. And I really like that, and it's like focused on the Bridgerton servants, like the three ones that we've been like following throughout all 4 seasons for now, which is really nice, and I really liked that. I thought it was a really cool aspect. I did know about the Cinderella story beforehand because my sister, who's read, I think, all the Bridgerton books, told me about it. So I knew that going into this season that we were going to get a sort of Cinderella story, but I actually like this adaptation of essentially Cinderella more than like any other adaptation I've ever seen in a way so far. We'll see how that changes if I like it or if I don't, but so far I really like it. And then my next note is about Sophie entering the ball. It's only in the scene where she's getting the dance card and she's super awkward to John because she doesn't know what the fuck is going on, but her awkwardness was giving me such bad secondhand embarrassment. I was like, oh my god. She's so awkward, which I understand. She's never been to a ball before, but I was like, no, I hate it. I hate it so much. So I wrote down, I love Lady Danbury. I don't even remember what that was for, but I mean, I do love Lady Danbury. She's great in every way. I loved her costume. I thought like her and her brother's costumes where they're both just like, I am Zeus. And I like how their dynamic has changed over time. And I'm guessing throughout this season it'll change even more because obviously her brother is pursuing Violet. I feel really bad for Penelope this season. I liked Penelope in season 1 until I found out that she was Lady Whistledown, and I was like, I cannot forgive her for the atrocities that she has done to people, especially for her friends. I was like, I cannot forgive her for that. And she kind of won me over a little bit in season 3, but not a whole lot. I still very much am like, I don't know. But I do feel bad that she's just getting summoned nonstop to speak to the queen, and her essentially having to like bring in all the gossip, but now she doesn't want to ruin anybody's reputations because they all know that if she does, she's the one who's done it. So I kind of feel bad. She's like between a rock and a hard place essentially because the queen wants juicy gossip, but Penelope doesn't want to ruin anybody's image anymore, and so she's trying to like fish for like, good suitors and diamonds and stuff like that. And of course the queen like immediately focus on Bridgerton, and she's like, fuck. She's like, well, I know about him. It's not gonna end well. So I do feel really bad for her because she just keeps getting someone being like, you find something, is there anything good, I wrote down that I really like Violet's costume. I think I liked a lot of the costumes, but I really liked Violet's. I thought it was super duper cool. I like the lace back that's kind of happening, and I really like her mask. I think it's super duper cool, and she just looks so pretty. I loved it so much. I'm happy for Violet, and I because I think overall with her romance story, she's gonna get a good relationship out of it, or at least I hope she does. And I wish she could wrangle her kids a little bit better. But I feel so bad for her. It's like this woman wrangling, what is it, 6 kids that she has or something like that. It's too many children. But yeah, I feel bad for her in that sense. But I really did like her costume this episode. I thought it was super duper cool. And then my next note is about Lady Danbury saying that she essentially wants to retire from society. The context of that whole scene, I at first was like, she's really dropping to essentially her best friend at a ball that she wants to leave society. And it at first I was like, this is, I feel like, not the place. But then it goes into that really sweet thing where she's like, I've done this for years, and it's like, I want to go back to my home place that I haven't been to in a really long time, and all these things. And it's like really really sweet, and you can tell that it's like she wants to let her friend down very nicely, being like, I've been there for you, but also I need to be there for myself and do things that I want to do. And it's very sweet, and I love Lady Danbury. You can know that she's been through a lot throughout her life, and then the queen just straight up goes, no, and I just burst out laughing. I thought it was so funny, but I was like, oh, that's so queen coded too. It's like, I love that after, because I rewatched Queen Charlotte at the same time, because that's probably my favorite show out of the Bridgerton series is actually Queen Charlotte. I really like it, but it's like, I love that nothing's changed between when Charlotte just became a queen and now. Like, nothing at all has changed. It's like she will get what she wants, and I find it so funny. But I was like, I think by the end of the season she'll be like, yeah, my friend needs to be off on her own. It's gonna happen. It'll be sad, but like, it needs to occur, because Lady Danbury has been doing that for so long, and it's like, putting up that mantle for someone else would be nice. So I like that. I thought that was so funny. She just straight up was like, no. I thought it was hilarious. And then the private terrace scene was so cute. Like, the whole thing, because like, you can tell that she's awkward, and she's awkward, and I think that's what Bridgerton likes about her. It's like, he notices that she's like staring in awe at a chandelier because she's so out of place. Like, she's clearly never been to a ball, she's never experienced anything like that, and he finds her intriguing because of that, and the fact that like she didn't really know who he was until he like hints that Violet Bridgerton is his mother, and then she's like, oh yeah, I know about you because of Lady Whistledown. He's like, that's how you know about me? So it's like, there are hints here and there that she's not actually a part of society. But I found that scene so cute because he's so calm and nice to her, and I think it at the same time gives him an excuse to sort of be open, because she can kind of see through him, and she's like, clearly you put up this front for other people, like, what are you really like? And he tells her, he's like, I don't feel like I fit into society, and I don't really want to. And I find that really nice, that it's like, this is the like honest dynamic, that it's like through, I mean, he's not anonymous, but for her anonymity, where it's like she, I guess, kind of understands in a sense where it's like she's not in society, but she watches society, and so that sort of helps her in that way. And then of course Sophie can reveal, being like, I know you don't want to be pursued, but like, this is all the effort that these ladies go through for you to even notice them. And it sort of breaks his brain, because there's that scene where he's just sitting on the staircase being like, oh my god, and he's just like throwing all of them off. So it's sort of crazy through that, and then he's like so gentle when teaching her how to dance, and it's so cute, and he like wants to kiss her, but he's like, no, you're a lady, or possibly a lady, and like, it's not the time. And I think he's already falling in love essentially, but she's like, nope, I'm a dip. So I really liked that, and I think that's where I like the Cinderella sort of aspect of the story. Like, the slipper has turned into a glove instead, so I like that, but also it's just like, it shows sort of the unseen aspects that, like, if you're watching like the Disney animated movie, we don't really get to see, where it's like, she's explaining how much effort it takes to look like that, because she knows it's like, she gets back and she's hiding everything everywhere it should be, and then she has to like listen to her family talk about how nice the ball was, and like these things and that. And obviously one of her stepsisters is lying to her about talking to Benedict, but I found it really interesting that they sort of go into more detail about that than just being like, and then she came home and everything was fine. So I did really like that. And then I put a note that just says like Penelope making a bet with the queen about Benedict getting married at the end of the season. I thought that was so funny because like Penelope's like, yeah, I'll wager, and she's like, you'll wager, and she just goes, fuck. And I thought it was so funny that it's like there's just, oh, I love their dynamic. I feel so bad for Penelope, but I love their dynamic because Penelope's like, oh my god, this woman's gonna kill me, and the queen is just like, give me all the gossip. And I thought it was just so funny. And then my last note is just I wrote it after Violet talks to Eloise, and Eloise talks about how she's on the shelf, and Violet just goes, what shelf? She's like, the shelf, and she's like determined to be a spinster, and Violet's just like, listen, you and Benedict got free reign last year. That's not happening this time around. You and Benedict are getting married. And I'm like, she's got to wrangle all those kids. And of course, Hyacinth's like sneaking in to try to go to the ball. And she's like, now I've got one kid who's way too eager to go into society, and two kids who refuse to get married even though they need to or they should. And it's so freaking funny. And I love it so much. I love the Bridgerton dynamic. They're so sibling coded. It just brings me so much joy every single time. I think those are all my thoughts for the first episode, so I'm very excited to see what happens for the next ones. Alrighty, so I just watched episode 2 of Bridgerton, and I also really liked this one. I liked the way that it was set up at the beginning, where it sort of like goes to like Sophie and Benedict's time at the ball and their kiss, and then it sort of like reverses everything to show what it was like for her going to the ball and her experience with that. And I thought that was really, really cool, and just the way it was done, because it's like, oh, now this episode's going to be about Sophie and like how she got to the ball, but also obviously like we got experiences of like her growing up with Araminta, is I think how you say her name, but like Araminta and Rosamund and Posey, and like all of them together, and like what absolute hellish landscape that was, and like how her dad ended up in that relationship, and how Araminta became the quote unquote evil stepmother and stuff like that. And so I liked this episode. And that point, I didn't take as many notes this time around. So my first note is about the staging of Araminta's room, because it's all shoes. It's all shoes, and I really like that. It's like the two like long glass columns of shoes on the sides, and then like cupboards full of shoes as well. I was like, that's so many shoes. It's crazy, but I thought that was really interesting staging to go for, and I actually really liked it. I was like, this room is interesting. It's really cool, just the way that it's like shoes on display everywhere. And I love that. I love Sophie's dynamic with, I believe it's Alfie and Emma are the two servants that she talks to the most. And I really liked their dynamic, and how the two of them are just so there for her, where she's like, oh, it'd be so fun to go to the ball, and both of them are like, then go. And I liked that. Like, obviously from a flashback, Emma's been with Sophie like essentially since her entire childhood, and Alfie's just like a really good friend, where he like tries to get her to talk to Benedict and like come out and tell him who she is, and she never does it, I guess in a way understandably so, like coming from her perspective that it's like she's an illegitimate child that's now working as a maid. It's like there's a small prospect that she would be able to be in that relationship, and I think she kind of knows deep down that if it were to come to light, it would be very scandalous for the Bridgertons, which I'm sure like the entire second half of this season is going to be about, I'm guessing. But I loved Alfie and Emma's relationship with Sophie. I thought it was so cute. They're like such a cute, loving, like, I mean, I think overall with all the other servants as well, but especially those two, like Sophie's relationship with them is like, these are the family members that she has now. Because I mean, Posey's nice to her, and I think Posey sort of sees her as a sister, but Rosamund and Araminta obviously don't. And so it's like, I like that she, at least in the household, she has a family, and she has people who do love her and do care about her, and are like, you are in an unfair situation, and here's how we can, in small ways, change that unfair situation. And I really, really liked that. And then I have, like, a note about Eloise getting linked up with all the suitors because Benedict used her as cannon fodder for him to find Sophie. Which I thought was really funny because there's at one point where, like, someone goes down to, like, kiss her hand and she's, like, smiling and she just goes, ugh. And then she smiles again. And it was so funny. It's like, Eloise is suffering. And it's hilarious. And that entire montage of Benedict going to, what is it? It was like 6 balls and 3 soirees and too many promenades or something like that. Like, Eloise mentions the numbers and it's like an exorbitant amount of outings for those two. And she's so done with it. But I feel bad because at one point Benedict just looks so sad. I'm like, oh, he just wants to find this woman, but he can't find her anywhere, and it's just so sad. So I'm glad that, like, Violet eventually steps in, which I have a note about Violet momming Penelope about Benedict, where, like, Violet shows up and she's like, so you've been writing about Benedict, which means you know something. She's like, no, I don't. She's like, Penelope Bridgerton. She just sits down. She's like, yes, ma'am. Which was hilarious. It's like, oh, she's getting mommed right now. But I do like that Violet sort of stepped up to help Benedict, being like, if this woman is the reason you get married, I'll take it. And so she's like, look at the glove, here's the thing. And of course, like, he doesn't find her because Sophie doesn't open the door, but I just found it really cute that, like, Violet is trying to help in her own way and just finding out. And I love that scene where she was momming Penelope. It was so funny. And then I loved the friendship between Charlotte and Lady Danbury this episode as well, because I mean they have their fight because Lady Danbury is like, no, I want to leave, and so she just ends up walking away and they have their fight, and it's very petty, but at the same time it's well justified, I think, on both ends once you realize, like, why Charlotte says no. But the fact that Lady Danbury's like, I want to see my homeland, but Charlotte doesn't want to be abandoned. And I think that's where, like, Brimsley comes in, where it's just he loves Charlotte so much and he cares about her so much. The fact that he would, like, rush over to Lady Danbury to be like, please just, like, make up. Like, you're her one and only friend. And you are one of the very few people that knows what George is like, and that George, like, who George is, and that he is sick, and the fear that Charlotte has through that. And then of course it, like, comes to light where Charlotte's like, I don't want you to leave me because I don't know what I would do if you were gone and George died. And it's just, their friendship is just so cute through that, and I love it, where it's like they're, you know, they've changed so much. And I think that's where watching the Queen Charlotte show comes in to the aspect where it's like they've developed such a wonderful friendship with each other. And it's like, I think by the end of the season, Charlotte will learn that Lady Danbury does need her space to go back to her homeland. But I think that she'll also learn that she has more than just Lady Danbury. I mean, I think in a way from the Queen Charlotte show, it kind of looked like for a second that, like, she was starting to develop a friendship with Violet. And I think that could be a fun friendship that starts to culminate or something like that. Like, I think Charlotte has more friends than she thinks she does, but she's also the queen. So, like, obviously it's the random power dynamic of, is it a friendship or are you here because you're my subject? And so I think there's something like that. But I think that in a way, with her pressuring Penelope, I think that could actually turn into a very beautiful friendship, because I mean, Penelope's a gossip and she can always tell the queen things that she knows that she doesn't feel comfortable writing down. And I think that's where the relationship could culminate, where it's like, I know, like, this person has a mistress and he brought her to this ball, and it's like, I can tell you this, but I can't, like, write it down in Lady Whistledown. And I think that would be a really cute friendship that culminates. I don't know if it will happen, but it would be nice to see, just because Charlotte needs more friends. But yeah, so there's that. And then Araminta is so lying about that will. I guarantee you that that's going to be something that comes out of it, is that Sophie was actually in the will, and she was lying. She may even be lying about her mom. I don't think so. I think, in a way, I do think the way that her dad was hiding it when Araminta met her, I think that Sophie is an illegitimate child, but I think that Araminta is lying about the will, and I do think her dad left her something in that will. So I think that's probably gonna come out. Just the way that she looks at Sophie, she's like, I'm definitely hiding shit. So I think there's that. My last note is when Benedict is like helping her get up onto the carriage and he grabs her hand, and it's not the same, but it made me think of it, which is the scene in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie where Mr. Darcy like helps Elizabeth into the carriage and then does the little hand flex. It gave me that vibes, but instead it's very much like, I've grabbed your hand before in that way, or it's like very much like they essentially meet again for the first time, and he feels bad essentially for getting her fired, but she kind of got herself fired, so like in a way, like justifiably so, that guy was an asshole, but just like they kind of meet again for the first time, and it's very much like a have we met before kind of situation. Like she calls him Mr. Bridgerton, and then she has to cover up why she knows his name, and it's like he grabs her hand, and I think it's gonna take a while. I mean, maybe the revelation will come out at the end of the first half, so like at the end of episode 4, the revelation will come out that like she was the person that he danced with at the ball, but I'm not entirely sure, but I think that would be really interesting. But I'm curious to see where this random I need to get the servant that I kind of got fired a job situation goes. I think it would be really cute if he actually ends up getting her a job at the Bridgerton household. I mean, because he's kind of in charge of it right now because Antony's gone, so it would be interesting if that's the job that she ends up with. So I'm curious to see if that happens in the next episode, but I am really liking this season so far. I think I just really didn't like season 3, that I'm like, it's only uphill from here. But I am really liking this season so far. It's really interesting. I really like the costumes. I think they're all really interesting this season, and just the dynamics that everybody has. It's still very sibling coded, which I absolutely love. I love how sibling coded it is. I kind of wish we got more of the younger siblings, though. We haven't really gotten a whole lot of them, but I do like that Penelope's been, I mean, she was always kind of like a sibling to the Bridgertons because she hung out with Eloise so much, but I like that even now that they're like actually all siblings now by marriage, that it's like even more so, like when Benedict's asking her for help, and he's like, yeah, because I'm just, I am out there, and both her and Eloise just go, you're a rake. And it's so sibling coded in that, and I love it so much, and I just love the family dynamic that they all have, and that she very much now is like even more trying to protect the Bridgertons because they're her family now. It's very cute, and I love it, and I'm very excited to see where the story goes next. Alright, I just watched episode 3. So much happened in this episode. I took so many notes. I think this was the longest episode so far, because I think it was like an hour and 8 minutes. But, oh my god, so much happened in this episode. And I really liked certain parts of this episode, and other parts made me want to crawl in a hole and die. So, which in terms, they were just like really awkward scenes that I just couldn't handle. But all of Sophie and Benedict scenes were so cute, and I loved them. My first note is about the misleading cottage, because they like, Benedict and Sophie drive past the stables, and she's like, oh, is this the cottage? And he's like, no, this is the stables. And then they get to the actual cottage, and it's just like this giant fucking mansion, and she's like, wow, the cottage is not the right word for this. And I just started laughing, and then I knew that it was more than just a bruise. I mean, I think we all knew it was more than just a bruise, but like, I just love how she had to take care of him in the middle of the night. I was like, we get the injured man trope in the show. I'm so happy. It was great. And then I loved the bit where Eloise gets conned into either meeting suitors or having to go to a manners lesson, and shockingly she chooses the manners lesson and kind of looks like she's about to die with it. I think part of it is that like she's just traumatized by the whole thing, but I think also she's starting to realize the downfall of choosing to be a spinster. I think it's a weird storyline so far for Eloise, where she's like, I don't want to get married, and Violet very much is like, you should, but she's so keen on staying a spinster. But then at the same time, it's like she feels left out of conversations with Penelope and Francesca because they're talking about married life. One of those is a lot funnier, and I'll get into that conversation later, but like talking about married life or like other things that she can't really relate to because she's not married or she hasn't had kids or anything like that. So I think she's starting to feel a little bit left out in terms of conversations with her friends. But also, she, like, from the table sequence in the manners class, it's like, oh, that means I have to sit next to people that I don't want to sit next to because I'm like a spinster. And she's like, I guess, starting to realize the downside of not being married. It's a weird thing. I think they're teaming up for, because I'm guessing Eloise is going to be for next season, like that's going to be her season where she finds like a husband or whatever. But it's a weird sort of storyline for her to have this season, I feel like, where she feels like left out because of all the marriage talk and like what it would be like if she was a spinster. It's a weird storyline so far. That one I'm not thriving as much with because it's a little odd for me. But I did find the scene where Violet's like, well, if you don't want to meet with suitors, then you can go to Hyacinth's manners class with her. She just goes, oh shit. And she chooses the manners class, but I just thought it was really, really funny. And then after that, I loved Mrs. Crabtree. Mrs. Crabtree was great. She does not trust Benedict one bit with a woman. She's like, this guy is super nice. He's a great guy, but he's also a rake. And I love that she has the best intentions for both of them, though. And I think that's what I love about Mrs. Crabtree, is that she's like, this is cute, but it needs to stop because it's not, like, she's thinking about Sophie and she's sort of making Benedict think about Sophie as well, where it's like Sophie, in terms of being a maid, can't say no to Benedict because of the power dynamic that they have. And I'm glad that Benedict has someone like Mrs. Crabtree who can sort of like slap him on the head and be like, hey, you may like her and she may like you, but one, you're gonna ruin her reputation if people even think that you had sex with her, and two, like, technically speaking, she can't say no because you're in a higher status than she is. And so I love her and everything she is, because she also will like beat both of them on the head, where, you know, she's telling Sophie not to do work and she's telling Benedict to stay in bed and recover, and she's momming the two of them in a way that's really, really fun, but she's also being very real with them about like the power dynamic and class situation that they find themselves in. And I did really like her. I hope we get more of her. I don't think we will. I think this is it with the cottage, except they might like bring it back later on, because the way that the last scene is where they both longingly look at it, and I'm guessing like when they do get married, it's like they'll move into that cottage, so they'll spend more time there. But I love Mrs. Crabtree. She's so great. And then the next plot that I don't know how I feel about is Francesca's sad sex life. Because one, after all these years, Violet Bridgerton still can't tell her daughters about the birds and the bees without having an aneurysm, so she had to learn from Penelope, which is how the weird, like, Eloise walking into them talking about having an orgasm, and then them being like, it's about marriage things that you don't find that interesting, and Eloise feeling left out because of that. But it's just like, I don't know, it's a weird subplot of Francesca being like, what is, as they term, a comeuppance, or no, it's a pinnacle. What's a pinnacle? How do you have a pinnacle? How does it go? And I'm like, I don't know if I need to watch Francesca talk to, like, at least two different people about how an orgasm works. I'm not here for it. It sounds really boring. But also her husband, where he's like, "You've been having yours, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh man, ooh, this is sad sex life." I really liked the Maid Wars plot. It was so funny because I think it also like shows to Araminta like how valuable Sophie was, because she had to, was it take four maids to replace Sophie or something like that, and then of course they're all like fighting over maids, and then it's like you can realize who treats their maids well and who doesn't treat their maids well. So like Lady Featherington acts like she treats her maids well, but we all know from season one that she really doesn't. And it's like she, you know, you'd think that like with Varley being like, "Can I get a raise?" and she's like, "Yeah, you're a part of the family, I'll think about it." And then she gives her like old dresses and was like, "Well, you know, I had to get rid of all my old dresses, so I had to buy new ones." And then it's like, "Yeah, but if I give you a raise, then I have to give everybody else a raise." And it's like, that's how that works. And so it's like you can kind of tell through that, like the ending of season 3 does not make up for the fact that Lady Featherington is still a terrible human being. And so I think that's sort of where this part comes in, where it's just like she's still not a good person. I mean, even towards the end of season 3, it's like we still shouldn't be dismissing how horribly she ever treated Penelope, but in this stance too, it's like she doesn't care about her staff. And you can sort of tell that dynamic between the Bridgertons. Like Violet treats her staff fairly well, like they appreciate their staff, and of course all of them now are going up to their maids being like, "Are you gonna quit? Are you gonna quit?" But it's like you can kind of tell even in like the background, it's like the Bridgertons treat their staff fairly well. And I do like that prospect of this, that with the Maid Wars, essentially, that it's like these behind the scenes people are what make everything possible for these upperclassmen. And I think that's probably going to be a bigger input with this, where with Sophie and her experience being like the staff is what makes the household run. Like you may have the titles, but the staff is what makes everything happen. And the Featheringtons have the experience of knowing that, like, yes, the staff makes everything happen, but it feels like they haven't truly learned their lesson with that, which is kind of annoying, but honestly not that surprising. And then with this, it's like, hopefully, you know, people start to treat their staff out, or like Charlotte doesn't even fucking, she's like, "I don't even know if we have maids," and Brimsley's like, "We have this many maids and footmen." And it's like, wow, they're just so invisible in the background. Or like it reminds me of, I think it's season 1 when Eloise is trying to figure out who Lady Whistledown is, and she thinks it's this, like, one of the staff members, and the staff member like laughs at her. She's like, when would we have the time for that? But at the same time, it's like that's how rumors start, is through the staff, which I find really, really interesting. Oh yeah, and then I have a note from Lady Danbury and Alice's conversation about Queen Charlotte, and I think that Lady Danbury's gonna recommend Alice as a new lady-in-waiting, and that she's gonna be Charlotte's new friend, which I'm excited for. I'm like, yes, she's entertaining. This could be good. So I'm excited to see if that actually happens, because I think that would be really fun. I have a silly little note that Sophie's inability to relax is a mood. Because I can relate wholeheartedly. Like, I love the scene where she's like walking through the garden, and then she sees a weed and she's like, "No, I should leave it alone," and then she just has to go down and rip it out. Or when she gets caught like washing dishes in the kitchen, Mrs. Crabtree yells at her. She's like, "Get the fuck out of my kitchen." She's like, "Come on, calm down." She's like, "Between you and Benedict, like, get your shit together. One of you needs to relax. Like, both of you need to relax, but in different ways." And it's just, it's so funny. And then I have a note about Violet. She gets so flustered so easily about things, like partially because of Francesca asking about an orgasm, But then with like her conversation with, I don't remember his name, but Lady Danbury's brother, where she's trying to express her feelings, but it's coming out in a chaotic way because she's nervous, and it just is all over the place. And I was just like, oh my god! But he's so into it too. Like his face at the end is just like, yeah, which just made me laugh. But oh my god, she's so funny. She gets so flustered, and it's cute and hilarious, and I love it so much. I think my last note for this is they mentioned Sophie's pendant a couple times, because they mentioned it at the beginning of the episode when Mrs. Crabtree sees it, and then Sophie takes it off. But then she puts it back on when she right before she leaves the cottage, and I feel like there's a story behind there, because I don't entirely think that Araminta was telling the truth about Sophie's mom being a maid, because in the previous episode, like when she's trying to sell the shoe buckles, like the guy that she's trying to sell it to was like, yeah, I'll pay more for that pendant. So obviously that pendant is valuable, like somehow, but like we don't know why. I'm very curious about it. I'm sure they'll talk about it, because it's become at this point like a Chekhov's gun situation where they keep pointing it out, so we're gonna learn about it somehow. But I thought it was really interesting that they kept going back to it, and now my curiosity is piqued, so I wonder if we're gonna learn about it in the next episode, or if that's gonna be something in part 2 when that comes out in a month. So I'm very curious. But I think those are all my thoughts for episode 3. I go back and forth. I think the second episode's still my favorite one. I liked the Benedict and Sophie parts for this one, but I didn't necessarily like a whole lot of the other bits. Some of them were funny, but most of it was just like awkward situations, and I don't do awkward situations. I'm not an awkward situation person. So, but yeah, those are all my thoughts for episode 3. Alright, I just watched episode 4. I think I liked this episode the least amount out of all of them, just because I found the relationship between Benedict and Sophie really frustrating in this episode. Like, the frustrations are justified, but I still didn't like it. Like, of course, their dynamic is gonna change. Like, now she works at their house, and there's still very much longing there, but it's just the way that they talk to each other just drove me up the walls. I like communication. There's no communicating between the two of them right now, and I just find it really annoying. Like, of course, Sophie gets hired at Bridgerton House. I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen, but at least, like, he mentions that he tried to get her hired at other places, and no one would hire her, so, like, because of Araminta and stuff like that. So, like, I'm glad he at least tried, but he very much was like, and it didn't work, so I'm going to bring you here instead and convince my mom to let you get hired here. So he tried, but there's that. I have a note about Gregory's facial hair, because I hated it, but then it got shaved. I was like, thank God. He's like, yeah, check it out, and all of us were like, get rid of it, it looks bad. So there's that. What else do I have written down? Oh, Mrs. Wilson being so on board for Violet's love life. I loved that, where she very much was like, yes, you do you be happy with a man again. I liked from that one episode, like, Violet's relationship with Edmund. Like, obviously, they had a ton of kids, so they obviously loved each other, and she very much cares for him. She talks about how she's never been with anybody else. She's never really been in love with anybody else, but it's like, you know, like, after so long of being a widow, it's like putting herself out there, because she was pregnant with Hyacinth, I think, when Edmund died, and was at Hyacinth's probably like 13, 14 now or something like that. So it's like, you know, it's been a fucking long ass time, and the fact that she is putting herself out there now, and, you know, like, she's falling in love, she has a guy that she likes now, it's like, yes, go off, queen. Love that for you. Love that you have a maid who's super duper supportive. Hopefully when your kids find out, because they definitely will, they're also super duper supportive. So this is a weird side tangent, but I get jump scared every time they show a picture of Edmund, because I don't remember the actor's name, but he plays a character in Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, and all I can think of is John from Hellboy. I was like, that's John Myers, Special Agent Myers from Hellboy, and I get so like jump scared out of it every time I see a picture of him. I was like, Special Agent John Myers, and it's just so funny. Or tangent done, tangent done. My next note is about the scene when they're at the club and Benedict and Colin are talking, and Colin's like, "Oh yeah, I heard you're going to look for the lady in silver again." And he's like, "How'd you hear about that?" And Colin's like, "I heard it from Penelope, who heard it from our mom." And I just love the fact that nothing stays secret in that family ever. Like, the family's massive and like everybody knows about something, and I find it so funny. It's just, I love the family dynamic of the show. I find it so entertaining and so cute, and it never goes away, where it's like you hear things from the rumor grapevine, because it's like, with Colin, he's like, "Yeah, well, our mother told my wife, and obviously my wife is going to tell me." And so I loved that so much. I find it so hilarious every time they do anything like that. And then my next note is just apparently masturbating to the thoughts of Benedict Bridgerton is frustrating. And I think there was more to that scene than that. I think she wasn't frustrated about masturbating, but she was frustrating about she was frustrated about masturbating him, but into the sense that she's like, shit, I have a crush on this guy. I think it was more to be like, we are of two different standings than of anything else. But I found it so entertaining through that. That entire scene was just hilarious. She's like, fuck. So, yeah, and then my next note is when Lady Danbury and Alice are seeing the Queen, and Charlotte's like, yeah, she would make a really great lady in waiting, and Alice just gives Lady Danbury a look like, "I'm gonna kill you." And then they have that really cool conversation later on, where Lady Danbury is like, "Both of us come from a place where, like, we didn't belong with the other ladies in waiting, and, like, here's where you can put your shoes in here, not my shoes, your own shoes, and, like, be a friend to Charlotte," and stuff like that. And I like that conversation, and like Lady Danbury does it out of like partially selfishness, because she's like, "I want to leave, so you are my replacement." But also it's just like it would be, it's a good standing, I feel like, for everyone to be a lady in waiting, because you're like the closest person to the Queen imaginable. So there's that. But like that conversation, and then the conversation between Violet and Lady Danbury when they talk about it, because Lady Danbury that conversation's so funny, because they both get really into it, but because of two different thoughts. Lady Danbury's talking about getting Alice to be a lady in waiting so that she can leave. Like, she's like, "It'll be a great thing for Alice, but then it'll benefit me more." And then Violet is obviously talking about how I don't remember his name, but how she essentially wants to fuck Lady Danbury's brother. And so it's like they're on the same wavelength, but for two different reasons, and it's really funny. I love that scene so much. She's like, "Yeah, even if it's selfish, you gotta be there for yourself. Take charge. Be happy for yourself. Make yourself happy." And like, this woman is giving herself a pep talk, and it's hilarious. And oh my god, I loved it so much. And then later on, when Violet gets ready for her tea time, and she just goes, "I am the tea that you are having," I laughed so hard. So hard. It was so freaking funny. And then all my other notes are about Benedict and Sophie. Like, I got so frustrated with them. I was like, "Benedict, if you looked at Sophie's lips for 2 seconds, you would realize that she's the woman you were looking for." I got so frustrated with that. And I feel like, because I thought that they would end this part with him finding out that she was the lady in silver, and they didn't. So I have a feeling that now they're gonna wait, and like he probably won't even find out now until like the second to last episode. That's my new theory now, is it's not gonna happen until like episode 7. I think that's when it's gonna occur, and so I'm just gonna get frustrated for essentially 2.5 more episodes and be like, "God damn it." But there's that. But I also think that, like, even if he did find out, it wouldn't end well, because this part ended with him being like, "I want you to be my mistress," and she's like, "You can fuck right off." And it very much is that, where I think he had good intentions, but it's just like, that's not what everybody wants, in a way, where they're all just like, oh yeah, we can just take a mistress, and it's like, yeah, but like then they have the standing as a mistress. It's not the greatest standing still. But my last note, I don't think it's in the same genre, but I had to write it down, which is I just wrote like when Benedict says "you consume me," kind of gives off the same energy as "you vex me" from season 2, but nothing will beat "you vex me" because "you vex me" is fantastic. I'm an enemies to lovers fan. Like "you vex me" is on a whole other level than "you consume me," but I feel like "you consume me" is gonna become the new "you vex me." So that's why I wrote it down. But yeah, I think those are all my thoughts for this episode. Like I said, this was like my least favorite episode out of the 4. So it's sort of like ending on like more of a negative note. It was sort of rounding out some plot points already. So like Violet's love life is more open and better. Francesca's and John's is more open and better. Eloise is still a bitch. I don't like Eloise this season. She's so frustrating. She's so mean to Hyacinth too. I just be happy for the girl. Hyacinth is so excited to like go out into society, and Eloise is such a Debbie Downer about it. I was just like, dude, just be happy for your sister. Not everybody wants to be a spinster. Some people just want to get married. I found Eloise so frustrating on that part, but yeah, I'm sure more conflicts will occur between that. Like, I think they're just setting up for a weird subplot of Eloise realizing that she wants to get married or something like that, which I'm not entirely here for. I don't know, I guess we'll have to see. And then obviously with it ending with Araminta moving in next door to the Bridgertons, that's going to cause issues for Sophie, and I feel like somebody's going to find out that Benedict wants to take Sophie as a mistress, so that's going to be a whole debacle right there. We'll see. I wasn't planning on watching all 4 of these in one day. I mean, you can't really tell, but I'm wearing the same clothes. As you can see from the video, I watched all 4 of these episodes in one day. I was going to split it up into 2, and I just kept watching. So I mean it was fun. I'm so tired now. But I don't binge anymore. I'm too tired for that shit. But I was just like so invested into this. I was like, this is entertaining. It's got a lot happening. I'm here for it, kind of. So there's that. I don't know if I have any more thoughts for this, so I'll post this video and then we'll go to part 2 when part 2 actually comes out. Which I hate that we have to wait for it. I don't like that Netflix does that, and they're never consistent with how they release their episodes for anything. It's so fucking frustrating. So there's that. Yeah, I think this is becoming my second favorite season. So there's that. It has plenty of room to go wrong though, because I liked the first half of season 1, and then I hated the second half. So like, I think I'm very much a person where I'm like, I like it until they actually become a couple, and then I hate it. But we'll see. I love season 2 so much. So, but this is becoming like my second favorite season, I think, so far. It's just I love the plot so far. I think it's really entertaining. Some of the subplots, not as much, but I do like this plot, so I'm excited for that. Stay tuned for part 2. Let me know in the comments what you thought of part 1 of Bridgerton, and yeah, like, subscribe. Bye bye.